Welcome back to another episode of On the Fly, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. Today I am joined by my co-host Zach Owen and then our special guest of the evening, the Frank Favaro. So Frank, Zach, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing well. I've had a good week. Can't complain. Frank, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's been a crazy week for me, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time. So, before I let Frank kind of give his introduction, I'm going to give kind of a brief overview about how I met Frank and what Frank has done not only to help myself, but also help Air Control Products, the company that I work for my full-time job. So, Frank is really the customer experience slash customer service guru. And really, Frank's business is just about teaching companies that are in a sales or customer service business how to better treat their customers and how to take care of their customers so that it's more so not a customer salesperson interaction, but actually a friend interaction. So Frank has been working with ACP for almost the past year now, helping us kind of revitalize and explore new realms of customer service. And I can attest to you that being newer to the sales industry and the HVAC construction industry, I've learned a lot from Frank, and I've also learned a lot from my other coworkers from what they've shared through this program. But there's a lot more to Frank besides customer service, so I'll turn the floor over to you and let you give us and our listeners the big introduction.
Thank you guys. So yeah, for me, my entire career, first off, I think everything goes back to me. I was an athlete. I was a wrestler. I was a high level wrestler. I wrestled in the state finals in Ohio. I was ranked in the top three nationally in the country, and I take a lot of that. Um, After life in wrestling is over, what do you do to fulfill that gap, that where you need some sort of, for me, I like competition. I like competing. I like the grind of it. I'm a little weird in that way, and so coming out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Like a lot of people, it's like you come out of college and it's like, all right, so like, what do I really want to do? And like, I had no clue. So I went and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, what am I good at? What can I earn money doing? What am I passionate about? Right. And it's like, so I came up and I'm like, well, I've been an athlete all these years and all I really know is wrestling. So I'm going to help people get started on exercise programs so they can fulfill their fitness goals. And that's what I did out of college. So I actually became like a personal trainer. I started to like sell memberships, fitness memberships. And I had never done sales before. Right. So, but I worked for this really progressive company called FitWorks, and they were introducing me to these people, these ideas of Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy and all these like sales like extraordinaires, but they selling based off of relationships, selling based off of value, selling off of like, go out and and Zig Ziglar says it best. You can have anything in the world that you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And I love that quote. And even still to this day, it sticks with me. I heard it at 22 years old. And it's still the quote that I carry to today at 45 years old. You can have anything you want if you help enough other people get what they want. So, I got introduced to that and I took that mindset with fitness. So, it was like, learning about people, like there's not a better way to build relationships with people than to figure like, getting in shape and like your health and your fitness is very personal, right? It's a personal thing. And so just building those relationships with those people, getting to establish that, really helped my people skills. um, Walking in, complete strangers, an hour later we're best friends. Like that was like how it always went. And I realized like that was my strength, and I didn't have that. Like I'm a complete introvert. Like um, I watched a video today. I was a pretty good wrestler. Like I said, I was in an ESPN interview they did on me in 1994. I couldn't even make eye contact with the camera. Like I was like, oh my gosh, they're like, I'm like touching my jaw, and I'm like, it was so uncomfortable for me. And but after it's crazy how it's come full circle. So I got into the fitness industry. I spent 7 years there. Um, I went from the most entry level position to actually running in the entire facility. And it's where I met my wife. And she's like, is this what you want to do with the rest of your life? Like be in health and fitness? Because like as a gym owner operator, you make like 40 grand a year, and it was like, she's like, you have so much more to offer the world. So make a long story short, I went into 4 different industries since then and completely dominated the industries by taking that exact same idea. Go make friends with people, add value, touch lives, and you'll be successful. And that's where I'm at today, coaching those same principles. So it's kind of crazy.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's also, I think it goes into like breaking the mold of what people think a traditional salesperson is. Your average person would, if you ask them what sales means or what a salesperson is, they're going to say someone that tries to get you to buy something that you don't want. And I think that's the bad way to look at it, but there are salespeople that do that, and it does give a bad rap for it. But like you talked about in terms of relationships, but also in terms of helping people. I like when you're in sales and when you're trying to sell to people, chances are they want what you're trying to sell, or else they wouldn't be talking to you. But you kind of need to just guide them along the path, but also make them feel comfortable to where you're a resource that they can lean on. But then also you dive into more of the personal side of things and get to know them better, and then they may even get to know you a little bit better, and then you have that connection that's outside of work and outside of business. So I've always wanted this too. How did you get into the CX coaching realm?
So I found myself in a place in life where I was extremely successful. I'm not, I had earned 4 times more money than I'd ever earned before at the previous place that I had earned the most I had ever earned, right? And I got to the point where I realized that money was not bringing me happiness. I worked for a mechanical contractor. I worked in 2019, that mechanical contractor was rated the United States #1 mechanical contractor. And I was happy to be a part of that, right? And so I worked for a great company. I'm not talking a good company, a great company. And but I wasn't happy. So I had money, I worked for a great company, but I wasn't happy. And there was something missing in my life because I felt like my gifts were not being best utilized. And I get up at 5 a.m., I work out, right? I run. Some days I walk. What I'm doing some sort of activity every morning. And if you work out in the morning or any time of the day, a lot of times you have those conversations with yourself, right? Those really blunt, honest conversations with yourself. And some of the times it's like you have that voice telling you like you need to do something. And that voice just kept getting louder and louder and louder in my head. And I had to make a change. So originally, I was going to, and this was right before the pandemic, because I just wasn't fulfilled. And I'm just the type of person like money, I can make money anyway. And money's not really hard to make. Um, what's hard is to be happy, right? And to be fulfilled. And I was just having this voice in my head saying, "You're wasting your gifts, and you need to pivot. You need to do something else." And originally, I was going to open up a kids fitness facility because I saw I was coaching youth wrestling. I still coach youth wrestling, and I was like all around the high school. There was like all these like suicide prevention letters, like posted on the wall, like it's it, don't do this, make a phone call, it's never that bad, like the call to action basically for suicide prevention. And I was so far removed from kids because I hadn't been in the sport of wrestling for so long, so I hadn't been coaching. And I'm like, is this the world that kids are growing up in today? Where like they're posting these things on the walls of schools, and it really touched me, and I was like, I got to do something. So I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to pivot. I'm going to open up a kids fitness facility that's not even geared towards athletes. It's towards kids that are not athletes, It was about the kids that are just they're in front of screens all day, right? And we live in this crazy touchscreen era where our digital intelligence is up and our emotional intelligence is down, and there's depression, and screens are not good for us. I mean, I've read the research. I don't know if you guys have. Don't get me wrong, I love technology, but screens are not good for us. And, this is very long winded, but I reached out to a guy named John DeJulius because for some reason, the content that he was putting on social media, because I'm a learner, like I'm always reading, always learning, always watching TED Talks, like any way I could get better at business, I'm all in on trying to improve. And so I discovered John DeJulius, and I really loved his content. Make a long story short, his son also wrestled where I wrestled for high school. So we had that connection. And I reached out to John DeJulius ice cold. Like he didn't know who I was. I didn't know who he was. And he took a meeting with me, and we met for 4 hours that day. And the idea was I was actually trying to like pitch this idea of kids fitness to him. And he loved the idea and he was all in on helping me with it. But the pandemic happened. And next thing you know, I was not going to go rent out space, brick and mortar space. Nobody was going into facilities. And he planted this seed in my mind. He said, I think you have a great business idea. And if by some chance it doesn't work out, I think you would be a phenomenal customer experience coach, facilitator, whatever, trainer, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to license a handful of people in my methodology, and I would love for you to be a part of it. So I was like, oh, that sounds great, this and that, but that wasn't in my mind, that wasn't but it's still, you get a guy like John DeJulius who says that he thinks you'd be a great fit for something, you're going to listen because he's a super successful guy that you have the utmost respect for. So I went through the presentation of what it was. I didn't find it was the right fit at that moment in time. And he sends me this letter, this email, and writes a letter and signs an autographed book for his recent book. And he's like, I just can't stop thinking about you being in my coaching program. He's like, I just love your passion. I think you're the right fit. And they ended up making an offer that I couldn't refuse to become a coach. So I burned the ships. I quit my job with no money, no customers, I've never had been a coach, quote unquote, business coach before. And everybody in the world thought I was crazy. My mom, everybody included, because how are you going to walk away from the money that you're earning? And I did, and that's how I became the CX coach.
Awesome, Frank. The quote that really stuck with me there was making money isn't difficult, but finding happiness is. I think that's very impactful, and a lot of people don't truly realize that. In that same vein of making money versus being happy, it sounded like it took you some exploring and some time, even after college, to find what you love to do and what made you happy. Is there any single piece of advice or anything you might tell college Frank or even high school Frank now, looking back, that would maybe lead him in the right direction?
I think, I would say, and I believe in God, number one, and I would say that we all have God-given gifts, and your gifts are different than my gifts, but everybody is given a gift. But some people it's one, some people it's three, some people it's five, but whatever it is, And by the time we're 18, 19, 20, 25, 30, we should like know our strengths, right? What are we good at? Use that gift that you have. And if it makes you happy, you're good at it, and you can earn a living doing it, that's where you should go. That's where you should go all in, because it's not really work if you really enjoy what you do, right?
Absolutely. And kind of along those lines too of advice that you would give either like say to yourself when you're younger, but even people who are starting out in sales or starting out in a customer service type position, what would you say makes like your prototypical or your ideal salesperson?
Whoa. So this is a really good question because sales is really, really hard, right? It's if it was easy, everyone would do it. But the other hard part about it is people that are in sales are almost embarrassed that they're in sales at times. If you think about it, they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm in sales. And it's like, and a lot of times people don't truly understand that, to sell. Let me explain something. The word sell comes from it's an old, it's a very, very old word, and it comes from the meaning. I think it's a Latin word, and it's called Salon, Sellan. It's Salon, and Salon means to give. It means to serve. So in essence, selling originally was to serve, to give. But because of, you know uh, unfortunately over the time, I did a survey, some market research recently on LinkedIn. What is the first thing you think of when you hear salesperson? What is it? What do you like? Oh, he's like a salesperson is calling you. What do you think?
You think, oh, I got to get out of this conversation, right?
Right. Yeah. Like you're like, hey, there's a salesperson knocking on the door. Right? What do you think?
Gonna ignore the door and don't go talk to him.
Right? So selling has this negative connotation. It does. Let's be honest. Let's be real. And what you really have to buy into is you're not selling something. You're a problem solver. It's changing the paradigm of how you look at selling. But that's really hard to do. And that's where my coaching, that's where like I love coaching salespeople individually for that reason, because you have to change the way you look at yourself. You're not selling something like, I'm annoying this person. I'm trying to sell them something that they don't even want. We look at selling as like, taking advantage. I look at selling as giving advantage. So there's the difference. It's a mindset more than anything else.
Yeah, that's a great explanation and a great answer. And I think too, like what you touched on, and when you asked this too, like when you get a phone call from a salesperson, you're like, you dread it because you think that they're trying to sell you something that you don't want. And I guess it really comes down to like how people come in contact with the person that they're trying to buy something from. Like what type of lead is it? Is it a hot lead? Is it a cold lead? Like I think getting a cold call from somebody trying to sell something feels a lot different than when you say you submit a request to schedule a test drive for a vehicle. It's it's all about how the initial interaction and the initial kind of first impression comes to play.
Mhm.
But kind of shifting gears here a little bit from sales more so on the financial side in terms of your life and where you're at right now. So you have your CX coaching business, but I guess in terms of investment strategies and ways that you've not only set yourself up but also your family and your kids for the future, what are some of the biggest investment, I guess, goals that you have, but also strategies that you used for your family?
you know yeah, I did not grow up um, with a competent, I love my parents, right? But like they were not people that understood, how to invest. Um, they didn't, they really had no idea because they lived paycheck to paycheck, you know. So there really wasn't an opportunity to invest. So, now, investment strategies now, I understand that you just cannot have one linear income, right? You need multiple channels to help you get to where you want to go. So for me, and my wife, it's figuring out what are our goals, what do we want to accomplish, where do we want to be at a specific age, right? What do we want to have? And then it's putting that plan together, and doing the things necessary to get there. Sometimes that's a little bit of sacrifice, um, during certain times, and certain times it's not, right? But it's always for us, keeping to the plan more than anything else.
Those are good words, Frank. So to boil things down, and give our listeners a little bit of maybe advice if they're trying to get away from that paycheck to paycheck style of life, right? Something I always like to ask is, do you budget? And if you do, how in depth do you go into it? Do you use automated software? Do you just check your banking account every so often, make sure the number's still going up? What does Frank do?
That's my wife and I, are completely different,
Hmm.
and that's the paradox of being married too. At times it's the challenge of it all, because you have to kind of, when you're married, you kind of, at least for my wife and I, it's like, you know we managed our finances completely different, and then you have to come together and do something, to that is jointly. So it's a little bit different. What was the question one more time? I want to make sure I answer it good for you.
Just kind of along budgeting. How in depth do
Budgeting.
you go? What do you do um, to budget?
So my wife is a budgeter. I am not a budgeter. So for me, I have a certain amount of money, that I am able to spend every single month, and she's the boss. So I just listen to her, and she puts me in the right place, and we go from there, because that's not my strength. Um, Prior, I was, as long as I see my accounts going up, that was how I budgeted, right? If my accounts were going down, that's when I was like, uh-oh, like now I got a problem. But I've been fortunate and grateful that most of my career, my trajectory has always been up. So I really haven't had to worry about it. But doesn't mean I haven't made really stupid decisions with money. And that's where my wife kind of helps me. And I need that, because at the end of the day, I don't really want to work past 55. You know what I mean? So at 55, I want to have my goals accomplished, and be in the position I want to be in, and still have high quality of life with lots of money, so I can be comfortable.
Absolutely. So speaking about goals, you just mentioned when you want to retire, you want to have all your goals accomplished by a certain age. Um, do you have a big goal for 2023? Anything moving forward you have your sights set on?
I always have goals, yes, because I believe that, if you don't have goals, then it's, what do you have? You're swinging at the pinata, with blindfolded and your eyes closed, right? So I like to swing at the pinata with my eyes open, and I got a better chance of hitting it. So yeah, 2023, I've got some pretty aggressive goals. It's quadrupling my business from 2022. And not only doing that, doing it in a way that allows me to have more happiness. Because once again, it's not about just money. So I'm going out, I'm exploring, and I have new offerings, with my business that I'm putting out there, and doing different things. Because number one, you don't get locked into, this is what I do for a living, so this is all I can do. No, use your gifts. So whatever those gifts are, if there's other opportunities in your life that maybe you can do something and earn more money doing it, why wouldn't you do it? Right? So don't just think one, with a one track mind. So I'm offering now, I have a few different offerings that I did last year, and that's going to allow us to get to that place.
I like it. I like it. So Frank, I get the vibe that you're the type of person that wants to build something that is remembered. And whether that's for your business, whether that's for the people that you've impacted, but also your family. So I'm curious, if you had to describe and almost like write your own obituary almost, what would be Frank Favaro's legacy?
Great question. My legacy would be to touch and impact like I do what I do, and I've said it, and it's like it's such but I want to impact a million lives. And how can I do that? Well, I can do it with CX coaching, because when I work with a business, let's say your company, right, Sean? How many employees you have?
Right now, we're about 63 to 65 range.
Yeah, so you got 65 employees, right? And every one of those employees have family, mom, dad, spouse, kids, whatever they are, how. And the beautiful thing about the systems that I coach is they don't just help the business. The best part about those systems is they permeate into people's personal lives. So when I get a company that I work with, where I get some feedback and they say, hey, you know, this didn't just help me at work, it helped me build a better relationship with my son or my spouse or my mom or my dad or my aunt or my uncle or someone in the community. I count that as an impacted life. It's a win. So I'm on that road and I'm touching lives and I'm impacting lives. And, these systems that I coach, I mean, they're built from, we all know what right and wrong are. We most 99% of people know what the right thing to do and what the wrong thing to do is. We all are human beings. It's how you make us feel, right? And feeling is the secret. But we get so caught up in our day to day and get in the weeds of everything that we lose track of that. And, we're just trying to get a job done. We're just trying to check the box. We're just trying to move forward. That we forget sometimes of, we're human, and we all want to be appreciated, respected, and feel important. And, so my systems, if I can go out and if I can coach these systems and I can impact these lives, and I know that maybe it's going to affect another life at home, and maybe it affects a generation, so that's why I do what I do. And that's a long-winded answer, but to me, it's very important.
Very well said. And it's true that you once you learn these things that say you may be using them in work, but you're going to take them home and you're going to try them at home, whether it's with your kids, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever. And it's stuff that not only by you being on this podcast episode and just talking about it, you're going to make an impact on our listeners' lives that are listening to this, and they're going to want to dig in a little bit deeper and find out ways that they can improve just their relationships in general. So whether you work in sales as your job or you just want to have better relationships in life, these are all principles that are valuable and that can make an impact on those that are close to you. Would you agree?
That's what it's all about, making an impact on people that are close to you and making an impact on the world around you. That's it.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Couldn't have said it better.
I'll let you use that. You can cut it out and put it on your website. So
I'm
kind of as we get wrapped up here, Zach, do you have anything else that you want to add before we get to our final questions?
I wanted to ask a question we have asked in some previous podcasts, but it kind of sounds like we just answered it. The question is, what is your life purpose? And I feel like, Frank, your answer to that was just pretty clearly stated, and that is to impact as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, like I found that purpose, like, with fitness when I was in my 20s, right? Like there's nothing better. And yeah, have you guys ever heard this is one of my favorite quotes, sayings, whatever you want to call it. Givers, when you give, you're actually the one who gains in the law. Like you gain more by giving. So by helping people get started on exercise programs in my 20s, and helping them get results, and then next thing you know, like they're so happy and their confidence improves and their lifestyle improves and their relationships improve because everything improves when you get healthier, right? I mean, would you guys agree? When you get healthier, most everything improves. Your mind improves, your body improves, your health improves, and you have more confidence. You're happier. So in my 20s, when I saw that, that became something I got addicted to, was helping people get results. And that's been the secret of my success my entire career, which is, yes, that's the purpose. It's to help people get results that they want, that they're looking for in their lives. Not my life, but I've always been a good, like, I'm going to jump on your bandwagon. And if you're successful as a byproduct, I know I'm always going to be successful. And
Yep.
that's the way of looking at it.
Exactly. Be the solution and help people get results. So as we kind of wrap this episode up, I want to dive into some of our most common questions that we ask our guests at the end of the episode. Zach already asked one of them earlier with your number one goal for 2023. So thank you for sharing that. But I also wanted to ask, if you had one piece of financial advice to give to our listeners, what would that be?
Oh, find the smartest people that you can, that you trust, and get their advice on what you should do with your money.
Fair enough. Valid advice. I like that. All right, question number 2. If you had to pick one book to recommend to somebody, whether it be business, finances, sales, anything like that, what book would that be?
Oh, I'm going to say it over and over again. The Go-Giver by Bob Burg.
Both you and Sean Christie have said that book. So I believe you were given that book by him too. Is that correct?
By Sean, no. But it's how we reconnected our relationship. I just spent a couple days with Bob Burg about 2 months ago, where I was at his Entrepreneur Academy down in Florida. Phenomenal. It was the best experience I've had in coaching in a long time.
Absolutely. I saw the LinkedIn post for that. It looked like it was a great time. And I'm sure you blew him away too with your relationship and your sales customer service skills.
He looked at me, he said, like a little brother. And so because we connected on that level. So, I love Bob Burg. Yeah, he's amazing.
Absolutely. And then question number 3, if you had to recommend one guest that we should have on this podcast, who would it be?
Mike Green.
Mike Green, absolutely. We've already had Michael on it, so we might as well get Mike too. I think he'd be a great guest. I'll let him know that you said that too.
Yes.
And then the last but most important question, if our listeners want to get in contact with you, where can they find you and how can they get in contact with you?
You can find me at my website is serve-centric, SERVE-centric, CENTRIC.com, servecentric.com. And you could find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. It's Frank Favaro. And my email is frank@servecentriccoaching.com. No hyphen in the email.
Thank you. And Zach, where can our listeners find you?
Find me on LinkedIn or any other social media. I'm at Zeon22, or on LinkedIn, I guess, is Zachary Owen.
You can find me on all social media at Sean Lacey 7 and then on LinkedIn at Sean Lacey. Make sure you check out dfli.net where you can see our podcast. You can learn about our coaching program and you can really get in depth and utilize some of the financial tools that we've put together on our website. But overall, Frank, we appreciate you taking the time. Some great content that you provided us here and some great recommendation, advice. we hope not only between Zach and I that we'll take it and put it into our lives, but we also hope that our listeners do the same. So from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yep, Frank,
My
thanks for your
pleasure.
time.
My pleasure, fellas. Thank you.
And this has been another episode of On the Fly, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. We'll see you next time.